Picture this: you walk into a newsstand and see yesterday's newspaper with headlines about events that have already happened, problems that have already been solved, and stories that are no longer relevant. You wouldn't base your decisions for today on yesterday's news, would you? Yet this is exactly what most people do with their perception of reality every single day. Tonight I want to reveal to you something so revolutionary that it will completely transform how you relate to everything you call real. I want to show you that what you perceive as your current reality, your bank account, your relationships, your health, your circumstances, is nothing more than yesterday's newspaper. It's old news. It's the outdated report of assumptions you held in the past, now crystallized into physical form. Most people are living their lives reading yesterday's newspaper and calling it today's reality. They're making decisions based on old news, feeling limited by outdated information, and missing the fact that today's newspaper, today's reality, is being written right now by their current assumptions, their present consciousness, their immediate inner conversation. What if I told you that every circumstance you see around you is already outdated the moment you observe it? What if I told you that by the time something appears in your physical world, it's already old news from the dimension of consciousness where all creation actually takes place? Last week, a businessman came to my office in complete despair. He said, "Neville, my company is failing. The numbers don't lie. The bank statements show I'm nearly bankrupt. The market research proves there's no demand for my product. These are facts. This is reality. How can I possibly turn this around?" I looked at this defeated man and I said, "My friend, you're reading yesterday's newspaper and calling it today's reality. Those bank statements are reports of your old assumptions about money. That market research reflects your past beliefs about your product's value. Those numbers are telling you what was true when you believed it was true. But they have nothing to do with what can be true right now." He stared at me in confusion. "But Neville, these are current financial statements. These numbers are from this month." "Yes," I replied. "But they're reporting on the effects of assumptions you made months or even years ago. Physical reality is always several steps behind consciousness. By the time something appears in your physical world, it's already old news from the realm of mind where it was created. While you're reading last month's financial statement, this month's financial reality is being created by what you assume to be true right now." I taught this man to stop reading yesterday's newspaper and start writing today's headlines. Instead of focusing on current financial statements, he began to feel wealthy right now. Instead of accepting market research as permanent truth, he began to assume there was unlimited demand for his value. Instead of reacting to old news, he began creating new news through fresh assumptions. Within 6 months, his business had completely turned around. New clients appeared as if from nowhere. Market conditions shifted in his favor. Financial opportunities opened that he had never imagined possible. Had he changed his reality? No. He had stopped accepting old reality as current truth and had begun creating new reality through present consciousness. You see, what we call reality is always historical. It's always showing us what we used to believe, what we used to assume, what we used to feel about ourselves and our possibilities. The person who looks at their empty bank account and says, "I'm poor," is reading old news about their former consciousness of lack. The person who looks at their sick body and says, "I'm ill," is reading old news about their previous assumptions of limitation. But here's the revolutionary truth. While you're reading old news, new news is being created every moment by your current state of consciousness. Every assumption you make right now is writing tomorrow's headlines. Every feeling you generate in this moment is creating next week's front page story. Every inner conversation you have today is drafting next month's reality report. Most people have this backwards. They look at their current circumstances and use them to determine what's possible for their future. They read yesterday's newspaper and assume it tells them what today's paper will say. They let old news dictate new possibilities. But consciousness doesn't work that way. Consciousness is always creating fresh, always writing new stories, always composing tomorrow's reality based on today's assumptions. The question is, while you're reacting to old news, what new news are you unconsciously creating? Let me tell you about a woman who understood this principle so deeply that she literally rewrote the headlines of her life. She came to me with a medical diagnosis that doctors called terminal. The test results were clear. The prognosis was definitive. The medical consensus was unanimous. She had 6 months to live. Neville, she said, I understand what you teach about consciousness, but how can I ignore such concrete evidence? The medical tests don't lie. The doctors have decades of experience. This is scientific fact, not opinion. I said to her, my dear, you're reading yesterday's newspaper and calling it today's reality. Those test results are reports of your old assumptions about your body. That diagnosis reflects your past beliefs about health and illness. That prognosis is telling you what was true when you believed limitation was true, but it has nothing to do with what can be true right now. But these are current medical tests, she protested. Yes, I replied, but they're reporting on the effects of assumptions you've held about your body for years, perhaps decades. Your body is always reflecting your habitual consciousness, but it takes time for consciousness to express as form. While those tests are showing you old news about your former relationship with your body, new news is being created right now by your present relationship with perfect health. This woman made a radical decision. She decided to stop reading yesterday's medical newspaper and start writing today's health headlines. Instead of accepting the diagnosis as permanent truth, she began to assume perfect health as present reality. Instead of focusing on test results that reflected old consciousness, she began to feel healthy right now. Instead of preparing for the death that old news predicted, she began to live from the life that new consciousness was creating. She stopped checking her symptoms every day because she realized that symptoms are just yesterday's news about her former state of consciousness. She stopped researching her disease because she understood that research was based on old assumptions about limitation. She stopped asking doctors for updates because she knew they were just reading from yesterday's newspaper. Instead, she began each day by feeling perfectly healthy. She moved through her daily activities with the energy and confidence of someone in perfect health. She made plans for the future based on a long, healthy life. She wrote new health headlines with every assumption of vitality she made. 1 year later, when she returned for medical tests, the doctors found no trace of disease. They called it a miracle, a spontaneous remission, an unexplained healing. But she knew exactly what had happened. She had stopped accepting old news as current truth and had written new news through transformed consciousness. This is what I want you to understand. Reality is always old news. By the time you can see it, touch it, measure it, or verify it, it's already reporting on assumptions that are no longer current. While you're reading old news, new news is being created by your present moment consciousness. Think about this deeply. Your current bank balance is old news about your former consciousness of money. Your present relationships are old news about your past beliefs about love and connection. Your existing health condition is old news about your previous assumptions about your body. Your current job situation is old news about your former beliefs about your value and capabilities. But here's the liberating truth. While you're reading old news, you have the power to write new ones. While you're observing the effects of old assumptions, you can be making new assumptions that will create new effects. While you're dealing with yesterday's reality, you can be creating tomorrow's reality. Most people become addicted to reading old news. They check their bank account daily, as if yesterday's balance determines today's possibilities. They monitor their symptoms constantly, as if this morning's discomfort predicts this afternoon's health. They analyze their relationship problems endlessly, as if past conflicts determine future harmony. But this is like trying to drive forward while only looking in the rearview mirror. You're so focused on where you've been that you can't see where you're going. You're so fixated on your old reality that you miss the fact that your new one is being created every moment. Let me share with you the story of a young woman who broke this addiction to old news and discovered her power to create new headlines. She had been unemployed for over a year, despite sending out hundreds of resumes and going on dozens of interviews. The rejection letters were piling up, her savings were depleted, and everyone was telling her to lower her expectations. "Neville," she said, "I have to face reality. The job market is terrible. My resume isn't impressive enough. I'm overqualified for some positions and underqualified for others. These are facts I can't ignore." I said to her, "You're reading yesterday's newspaper, my dear, and calling it today's reality. Those rejection letters are reports of your old assumptions about your worth. That job market analysis reflects your past beliefs about limitation and competition. That resume anxiety is telling you what was true when you believed you weren't good enough. But it has nothing to do with what can be true right now." "But these are current rejection letters," she said. "This unemployment has been going on for a year." "Yes," I replied. "But they're reporting on the effects of assumptions you've been making about yourself and your value. The job market is always reflecting collective consciousness, but your individual experience of that market is created by your personal consciousness. While those rejection letters are showing you old news about your former sense of worth, new news is being created right now by your present sense of value." I taught this woman to stop reading the unemployment section of yesterday's newspaper and start writing the success stories for today's edition. Instead of checking job boards to see what was available, she began to feel employed in her ideal position right now. Instead of analyzing rejection letters for clues about her inadequacies, she began to assume she was exactly what employers were seeking. Instead of preparing for more interviews hoping to convince someone of her worth, she began to feel valuable and desired as a professional. She stopped reading about the competitive job market and started creating new assumptions about unlimited opportunities. She stopped focusing on her resume as a historical document of past limitations and started feeling it as a current reflection of present value. She stopped checking her email for responses to old applications and started assuming perfect opportunities were seeking her out. Within 3 weeks, she received a call about a position that hadn't even been advertised. The company had heard about her through a connection she didn't even know she had. The job was exactly what she had been feeling herself doing, with a salary higher than she had dared to hope for. They offered it to her on the spot. Had the job market suddenly changed? Had her resume magically improved? Had her qualifications mysteriously increased? No. She had stopped reading old news about limitation and had started creating new news about unlimited opportunity. This is the power of recognizing that reality is old news. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being a creator of it. You stop reacting to effects and start creating causes. You stop reading yesterday's newspaper and start writing tomorrow's headlines. But let me be very clear about something important. I'm not suggesting that you ignore practical responsibilities or deny obvious facts. I'm suggesting that you understand what these facts actually represent. They represent old news, not current possibilities. They show you what was true, not what must continue to be true. You still pay your bills, but you don't let your bank balance determine your sense of abundance. You still address health concerns, but you don't let symptoms determine your sense of vitality. You still handle relationship issues, but you don't let past conflicts determine your capacity for love. You deal with old news practically, while creating new ones consciously. You handle yesterday's effects responsibly while generating today's causes deliberately. You manage current circumstances efficiently while creating future circumstances intentionally. The secret is learning to live in 2 dimensions simultaneously. The dimension of effects where you handle old news, and the dimension of causes where you create new ones. Most people live only in the dimension of effects, constantly reacting to old news. But when you discover the dimension of causes, you realize you're always writing tomorrow's headlines. I remember a man who had been struggling with debt for years. Every month brought new bills, new financial pressures, new evidence of his limitation. He was completely addicted to reading yesterday's financial newspaper, checking his credit score, analyzing his expenses, calculating his shortfalls. I said to him, "You're reading old news about money and using it to write today's financial headlines. Those bills are reports of your former consciousness of lack, That debt reflects your past assumptions about limitation. Those financial pressures are telling you what was true when you believed in scarcity, but they have nothing to do with what can be true right now. He learned to handle his old reality, paying bills, managing expenses, while creating new assumptions, feeling abundant, assuming prosperity. Instead of letting yesterday's financial newspaper determine today's money consciousness, he began to write today's abundance headlines, while responsibly managing yesterday's debt effects. The transformation was remarkable. Unexpected income appeared. Better opportunities opened. Financial solutions emerged that he had never considered. The old news of debt began to be replaced by new news of prosperity, not through magical thinking, but through the practical application of conscious creation, while handling current responsibilities. This is what it means to understand that reality is old news. You're simultaneously practical about effects and powerful about causes. You're responsible with what is, while creative about what can be. You read yesterday's newspaper when necessary while writing today's headlines continuously. But perhaps the most profound application of this understanding is in your relationship with yourself. Most people are addicted to reading old news about their identity. They look at their past failures and assume they predict future possibilities. They examine their current limitations and use them to determine what they're capable of becoming. I've always been shy, they say, reading old news about their former social consciousness. I'm not good with money, they declare, reporting on their historical financial assumptions. I never finish what I start, they conclude, analyzing their past patterns of behavior. But all of this is old news, my friends. Your past shyness is old news about your former social consciousness. Your money struggles are old news about your previous financial assumptions. Your incomplete projects are old news about your old beliefs about your capabilities. While you're reading old news about who you used to be, new news about who you are becoming is being created by your present moment consciousness. Every time you assume a new identity, you're writing a new headline about yourself. Every time you feel differently about your capabilities, you're creating tomorrow's news about your achievements. The person you think you are is old news. The person you're becoming through your current assumptions is today's headline. The person you'll be tomorrow is determined by the consciousness you maintain today. So tonight, I want you to make a revolutionary decision. I want you to stop being addicted to reading yesterday's newspaper. Stop checking old news as if it determines current possibilities. Stop using past effects to predict future outcomes. Start recognizing that everything you call reality is historical. Start understanding that while you're observing old news, new news is being created. Start realizing that you're always writing tomorrow's headlines with today's assumptions. Your current circumstances are not your current possibilities. Your present conditions are not your permanent truth. Your existing reality is not your eternal destiny. They're all just old news, reporting on consciousness that is no longer current. But here's the beautiful truth. You're always writing new news. Every moment offers you the opportunity to create fresh headlines. Every assumption you make is drafting tomorrow's reality report. Every feeling you generate is composing next week's circumstance story. Stop reading yesterday's newspaper. Start writing today's headlines. Reality is old news, but consciousness is always creating tomorrow's front page story. The pen is in your hand. What headlines will you write? What stories will you create? What news will you generate about your health, your wealth, your relationships, your possibilities? Remember, while everyone else is reading old news and calling it current reality, you have the power to write new news and create fresh reality. While others are trapped by yesterday's headlines, you can be liberated by today's conscious creation. Reality is old news. Consciousness is today's headline. You are the editor, the writer, and the publisher of your own life story. What story will you tell? What news will you create? What reality will you write into existence? The newsstand of tomorrow is waiting for today's headlines. Make them extraordinary. Thank you for listening. This is Best of Lectures. I'll see you in the next video.